Hi, let's ignore the fact that I've been around, or I've been gone for like 2 years. Anyway, so you want to do Genshin Impact shading? That's cool. Um, so what we're gonna start off with, this is my OC right now. He uses shade maps from A Turn on Return. I made his hair textures. I made his face textures and everything. His arms are from the Fontaine dancer thingy-majiggy. So he's a little bit different than the average Genshin model, but it is generally the same gist. You're gonna have the same things, and all you're doing is piecing together the lines that you have for your model versus the ones I have for my model. So, I guess the main difference would be is that he has his own eye texture. So he has a texture just completely for his eye, and that's usually so that way for quest I can make his eyes glow as well, um, because they usually glow for PC. That's just my way of translating PC, I guess, features to Quest because I have a lot of Quest friends. But anyway, I have all the materials right here. All of these materials are currently Poiyomi. Let me set that over. So we're gonna set it to Toonlit. That's usually the standard VrChat shading that people like to have, but you don't have to do it. There's multiple other options, like not that one. With VrChat, you can do mobile, you can do any of these. But for PC, you have a broader horizon. So for me, I have Poiyomi installed. I have all these versions. I tend to go to 8.1 and then Poiyomi Pro Outline. So for Poiyomi Pro Outline, it's gonna look exactly like the Toon shader, but it's not exactly. Um, we have all these cool and funky tools. So for all of these, what I tend to do first is I tend to select all of them. I'm going to unselect the one for his glasses and his eyes though, because the glasses have a very thin frame, so they don't really need outlines. And when you have outlines around the eyes, it generally looks kind of messy, and that's just not like a look we really want. So right here, we're gonna go all the way down to outlines. We're going to tick that on, and then for width right here, I'm going to set it to 0.2. So 0.2 generally was, I guess I could say that avatars do have trends, and recently people have been going for more thicker outlines compared to a year or two ago when people were doing 0.15 outlines, or even like zero point 0.1 outlines where they were more on the thinner side. So that way they would look like this from afar. It's just not the thing nowadays, I guess. So I've been doing 0.2 outlines, and what I tend to do, there is another way to do it, but this is just the way I do it. I set my mode to tint, which will seemingly make it disappear, but that's because the color is white. So when you set the color to be like a off, like pinkish red, that's when it starts to show up. I tend to go for an orange because uh, my avatars tend to have warmer color palettes, as I love and adore characters like Diluc. Diluc has a very warm color palette. Um, so that's why I go for it. Sometimes, at times, when I have things like weapons that are like enchanted or something, there's a thing you can do where you can set the outline emission. So if I were to set that to like 4, it will make everything like have a glow dodge type effect to it. But this is a man, he's not enchanted. So I'm gonna get rid of that. So for the outlines, that's it. However, for the face, I already have it on, because I already messed with these textures before. He's quite an old model of mine, but you're gonna want to do an outline mask. You can either make one or you can get one. Um, this is what mine looks like. I don't recommend screenshotting it because then that'll make it really really crunchy. But if you're desperate enough, then sure. Um, but I do advise usually making your own. Um, and that's gonna be it for outlines. So now we're gonna move up to shading. So for the shading, I will always have something already filled out here. That's because he's an old model, and I don't want to make a new one. So that's gonna be my mistake. But for all of these, we're going to set the shading. We're gonna turn that on, and then we're gonna set it to shade map. Okay. So on the shade map, we're gonna set the shade color to be like a very 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 like off like pink. There are different techniques you can use to make it more accurate to Genshin. but I've always been content with this. It's always looked canon enough for me. So this is just my personal opinion. So once you get your color, you're gonna want to copy the hexadecimal right here. Control Z or Control C. All right, and then after that, you're gonna want to come up here. And for the face shading is different. So usually what we did for the other ones is it was a shade map. And you could technically do it, but I don't do it because it doesn't look like it's canon. And I want my OCs to look like they're actually from the game because I use their assets and their techniques and stuff. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to do lighting type and we're going to go down to SDF. I have no idea what it stands for, don't ask me. But for the shadow tint, we're going to paste the hexadecimal right here. And then for the SDF map, he also has a shadow mask. So this is the male one. It's separated between male, lady, girl, boy, and then the child one. So that's basically how it tells, like how to cast the light on the face. 'Cause like here, let me show you. Okay. So for the main camera, let's set it to like right there. So here, I'll give you that while I take him over here. So I'm gonna mess with the camera light. You don't have to do this. This is just me showing you how the face maps work. So the more I rotate the light, it casts on the nose first, and then the rest of the face, and then it transitions over, and then casts a shadow on the nose on the other side. That is exactly what Genshin does. They use SDF maps, and it is very peak and very canon, and I love it. Then again, that's just my thing. You don't always have to do that. So as soon as we do those maps, you could technically just upload it here right now, but there are other things that we can do to make it look even better. So for the face, continuing on the face, right above shading, there's light data, and we're gonna go to shadow masks. So with shadow mask, there's this, and this means that there will be no shadows casting on the teeth, the tongue, the stars in the eyes, or sometimes even if the eye texture were down here, it would refuse to cast shadows on the eye. And right here, these are the eye whites, so behind the eyes, there will never be a shadow to be casted. So right here, as you can tell, the tongue and the teeth are unaffected by the shading. And that's usually what we want, because if the shading affects the tongue and the teeth, sometimes it'll give like a more like yellowy / orange look, and that's not always very flattering on your characters. So to go back over here, oh yeah, by the way, so for the inside, this is just a general tip. The lenses do not use a Poiyomi shader at all. So I just chose this one. It's just a gradient. I think it comes with Poiyomi. I'm not too sure, but I chose it and I set it to a multiply. So you can go into here. You can go into VrChat, mobile, particles, and then multiply. And because it is more of a gray, it will give a very slight tinted look to the lenses. That's just the easiest thing I do. You could always go to Poiyomi, set it to be transparent, and then give it a matte cap, but that's the hard way, and I'm not all about that life. So, right now, the second part, what we're going to do is we are going to do detail shadows. And detail shadows are absolutely gorgeous in my opinion. I love detail shadows. They always give more depth to me, and that's something I've always adored. So right here, let's do this one. So this one right here is his coat. And for his coat, there it is. So I found it right there. But for you, what you would do is you would go into the shading part, go into light data, and the second one down is called detail shadows. So these are going to be his detail shadows. I'm going to drag and drop them in, and then suddenly he has some lines going around the creases of his coat. He has some detail, yeah, like right here, like the wrinkle on the back, or you know, like these creases right here. It's very detailed. It's very gorgeous. I love it. And that's mainly all you need to do. These are his arms. I'm going to go do that. He does have normals on his arms. You can just ignore that. I'm gonna lock that. Okay, right here. These are his detail shadows, and as you can see, the creases are much more defined and highlighted. Sorry, I do have the hiccups. And that should be it. However, if you ever see in VrChat where people have excruciatingly, like, really, really, really super duper bright metals, what you can do is basically right here, you want to have a mask for it. Because if you were to turn off the mask and just have like the matte cap, he's going to be all shiny all over, and unless that's something that you want, like as if you were doing like a robot or something, then that would be acceptable. But these are clothes, these are fabric, so we're not going to do that. So what you would do is you would drag in a mask. So basically how this works is this is the matte cap mask, while this is his coat. So as you can see with this coat, it's everything, but with the matte cap mask, it only has very simple like colors of where it were to go over and put metals on top of. So things like the fabric were not included, but this all being metals, and some of the shoe, because it's made of leather, was done. So that's how you put in the matte caps. However, if you want it to be super duper bright, what we're gonna do is, usually your settings are different. These are usually always the settings that I use. But if you want to have really, really bright metals, you can turn up the emission strength, or you can turn up the multiply to make it more like saturated, or you can turn up the replace blend, so that way the textures under are a little bit more dull than the actual metals itself. Yeah, there's also the add blend, which does the same thing. And if you turn down the mix, you'll barely be able to see it. Or like with replace, it'll just completely ignore anything under it as long as you have it up. You know, like with the it's just the settings you just need to mess around with. But I usually put up mixed, and I have the intensity up. That gives a very like, hey, I'm metal, but I'm not blinding you kind of thing, which is outside of the Genshin style, but again, it's VrChat. That's what the trends are. And that's how you do the metals. Okay, so for the eyes, see, usually what you would need to do is you would need to go to the hair texture, and the hair texture would have the eye texture on it, usually up in the corner or something. And what you could do is you could have a mask to do that. So what a emission texture would look like is that it would be the hair texture, and it would have like a white blob, I guess, over where the eye texture is on it. Let me see if I can find it right here. I found one. So this is what an eye emission will generally look like. So like this is the original texture, and as you can see, the eye is in the right corner. Ignore that one, that was his beta. And I made a mask where it was just the eye and the eye shine, and down here this is the vision. So for the vision would also glow. But for him, he is different, since his eye is its own complete material. So what you would do is you would turn off shading, you would turn off outlines, and you would only have one thing ticked on, and that would be the emission. So for the emission, I set it as both the texture and the mask, so that way it has no reason to not show the original texture, and only in dark lightings will his eyes glow, because like this. So over here, for the emission settings, I set his emission strength to like 3 or 4 or something, and then I turned on light based. The reason why the emission would be so high is because when it is light based, it usually, dims down the lighting, but because his eye is 1 on the darker side and 2 light based, we need to crank it up a little bit more. So it doesn't really matter. I usually keep my eyes light based. I know a lot of other people do things like blinking, which is usually used for like visions and stuff. I sometimes do it, but most of my OCs don't even have visions. So I don't remember the last time I did that. Probably on like D-Luke or something. But yeah, that's the eyes. And for the glasses, I just did everything the same. I just didn't give them outlines, because if I were to give them outlines, it would be a little bit it'd be a little bit weird. So like on things a little bit too thin, like these glasses, I personally wouldn't do outlines, but that's how it goes. For the hair, See, what usually the hair would have is called a matte cap mask, which is basically the same thing, the same exact thing we actually did for the metals. However, it would use a different different matte cap. So over here, if I were to turn the matte cap on, I don't really have a mask, so I'm just gonna search up matte cap, and all of these come with Poiyomi. If you were to do this, and turn down the replace, turn up the mixed, and I don't know, the intensity, he will have shines around his hair. But right now it looks a little bit greasy because he doesn't have any like masks on it. But if I were to make a mask, it would be probably these like little white pieces right here, and it will make his hair shine. But I'm gonna turn that off because I don't have a mask and I'm a little bit too lazy to make one. Anyway, I think that is it for the basics. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, contact my Discord. I'll put it in the description.